I'm quoting you directly here. You wrote, by the end of your 20s, I had concluded that sexual freedom brings alienation. Uh, Alienation means, amongst other things, loneliness, I suppose, a breaking of relationships. What did you know and understand by your late 20s that you hadn't seen in your mid to late teens, if I can put it that way?
I suppose I'd just done a bit more dating. I sort of I prefer to draw a veil over the gory details because none of it was. I mean, none of it was especially great or fun or long lasting. Um, yeah, I experimented some. I experimented plenty. Um, came came grimly to the conclusion that if you prioritize endless optionality, by which I mean always having the opportunity to walk away and to be somewhere new. I suppose the modern, this was all before the dating apps, but this has been literalized for a generation or so younger than me by the existence of dating apps, where you can just scroll and find a new potential sexual partner, pretty much as though you're shopping on Amazon. So in a sense, all the incentives now work against the idea of finding somebody and settling down with them, because you have all of these things beeping on your phone, reminding you that there's plenty more fish in the sea. But I suppose even prior to that, the sort of the moral architecture for that basic paradigm was already there, and I suppose had been sort of developing since the sexual revolution. But if you take as your sort of basic your core belief, the idea that there are always plenty more fish in the sea, then you're never really going to make much of an effort to compromise with another person. You're never going to make much of an effort to find somebody with the kind of traits that would suit a long-term relationship. You're never going to be filtering for you'll be filtering for fun, or you'll be filtering for novelty, or you'll be filtering for emotional intensity, or you'll be filtering for all sorts of things which make for great anecdotes, or an interesting weekend, but not necessarily what makes for lifelong partnership. And I suppose I did that for a while, and it was interesting, and made for some great anecdotes and some fun weekends. But not really, not necessarily for, well, definitely not for lifelong partnership. And I can't remember the point exactly where I made a more or less conscious decision to think about it differently, but I did. At some point, I can remember dating like that, and then I can remember realizing that I was effectively, in quite an old-fashioned way, dating to marry. And I don't remember that being a particularly conscious decision, but I think my grandma's advice probably did play into it. At that point, I realized I was just filtering for quite a different set of things in the people who I was wanting to spend some time with. No regrets. It was the best thing I could possibly have done, was to adjust my paradigm in that way. The advice I tend to give people who, younger women who ask me about this now is, don't wait, don't be me, don't spend your 20s doing that if you're certain that what you want is a settled family life. Be clear about how you should be thinking about it. And don't waste your time with charming losers or sketchy guys or players. Don't do that, because it's not going to do you any good. And you'll end up you'll just end up where I did, with as many miles on the clock as I did, and that's not necessarily the best way to start married life either. I don't know. I mean, it's sort of slightly battered and bruised advice to the younger generation. Whether or not any of them will listen to my suggestion on that front, I don't know. My sense is that relations between the sexes now have got so embittered. Again, this might just be a case of not going outside enough. And that for all I know, there are plenty of young people who are doing just fine. But my sense is that the culture percolating out of the internet is actively counterproductive where it comes to forming new relationships and forming long-term relationships. And I do wonder as well whether there isn't more that older generations, particularly older women, could be doing to push against that. And I think if we leave family formation up to the dating apps, we're basically screwed. It's all of us collectively, because we won't be putting our heads together. But older people won't have been doing what we should be doing to support family formation among the young. I don't think they should be left entirely to their own devices. Traditionally, it's been interfering in the romantic lives of younger men and women has been absolutely the preserve of the middle-aged like me, and to a very modest degree. I meddle in the romantic lives of friends who are somewhat younger than me. My great friend Louise Perry, another reactionary feminist, has recently taken to organising singles nights, because she had so many young men and women write to her saying, how on earth am I meant to find a partner? That she ended up organising a sort of Debs dance for her readership, which was apparently a great success. I mean, whether any marriages will come out of it or not, I don't know. But we've come to the conclusion that there's a missing piece of life interfering from and it has to come from older women. I think I read recently about a conservative man who has set out to run basically a dating service for young conservative men and women in the United Kingdom. To me, that just seems weird. Like, the incentives are all wrong. Men shouldn't be involved in matchmaking. It just is. I just think that's the perverse the opportunity for things to go wrong and for perverse incentives is just way too great. I think you have to have the typical married mother of however many abstract interest in interfering in people's personal lives to be able to do that at all healthy. But there's a missing social space there, where I think I think older women can potentially step up and do a bit more there. The missing aunties. Oh yeah, that was I remember a guy who I worked with once. He was Indian hair. He was British Asian, and he was being carted around the British Asian arranged marriage circuit while we were working together. And he used to come in on a Monday morning and regale us with his exploits. And he used to talk about the aunties, and by that he meant the network of older women in his community, all of whom knew one another and gossiped with one another. He didn't just mean his father and mother's siblings, but the auntie is a sort of honorific which encompasses a much broader range of older women. It basically means like older women who feel entitled to meddle in your life. And it strikes me that there are aunties that are missing in our culture, and perhaps they drive us up the wall if we had them back, but also their absence leaves a gap.